starting.
It's starting?
Let's go.
I'm trying into it, or I don't see it.
Well, it should be right second.
Okay. Live stream is starting soon.
This thinks you're live, so.
It thinks I'm live?
Yeah.
Okay, let me. I have somebody that's tuned in, so I'll just ask. Hello. Is it working? Oh, it's totally working. Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Sarah, and welcome to Everyday Consent. This is our first ever live Q&A. Thank you so much to everybody who sent in questions and who's watching right now. We can go ahead and jump into questions. Do you want to read the questions to me, or I'll just read them? Oh, no, we got some feedback. Okay. It's our first time trying this out, so apologies for the awkwardness. But
Okay, cool. What do you want?
I don't know. Yeah, I mean, I can just send you the list of questions, and you can read them out loud. Yes, send it to Jessie. Hi. This is so different from filming.
Start talking.
Okay. Okay, everyone. So, so I asked on Facebook and Tumblr and Twitter for people to send me questions. And questions can be about anything. And if you're watching right now, you can send me more as we're going, and I'll try to get them. So it can be anywhere from just some consent-related question that's been bugging you lately to a follow-up question to one of the videos that I've done before, or a suggestion for a topic that you think we should cover, or just a question about our process and how we put these videos together, and who we are and what we do. So let's just go ahead, and I'm going to have Jessie feed me some of the questions that we got prepared beforehand, and I'll try and answer them.
You can tell them to put some questions in comments if you want.
Yeah, you can put questions in comments here if you want. And Jessie is watching it, and she will send them to me, so we can.
All right, first question. So here's a good one.
Okay.
Why even bother with consent?
Why bother with consent? I don't know. We could just go home, really. So, I mean, to me, the why does consent matter is basically comes down to the fact that sex involves people, and it's worth acknowledging that everyone involved is an actual person. And so, I mean, I don't know. There's like you could give the very basic answer of just like, oh, I don't want to be a rapist. I don't want to go to jail. But it's much more, even more importantly than that, I think it's just important to know that when you're trying to just have a good time with somebody that you're interested in, that they're actually having a good time and that you're not causing somebody harm when you don't mean to. And I think a lot of the topics that we cover on this channel are about not so much about like trying to not so much talking about when you like want to hurt somebody, because I don't really think that happens super often, but when you know you don't want to hurt somebody, and how to actually avoid doing that, and how to make sure that everybody's actually having a good time and it's a beneficial experience for everyone. Because sex and relationships and all of that can be really fun, and I think they are just really great things. And I think consent and being aware of consent is the primary way to make sure that that remains true. So that's my answer. Do you have a different answer? Put it in the comments.
I want to tell you the live stream's a little bit behind you.
Okay.
So you'll get comments and reactions like a bit delayed.
Okay.
So we might have to come back to stuff.
Sure, that's fine.
So if you put something in the comments, we're not ignoring you. We're just a little bit ahead.
Yeah. So I don't know if you guys heard that. The live stream is a little bit behind me. So if you put something in the comments, we won't see it for like a minute or two. So if we don't immediately respond to you, that's why. We'll come back to it, but we will respond.
All right. Next question. What are some good / healthy / productive ways to deal with rejection?
Oh boy. How can I tell if they can hear you when you're asking me questions? So I
don't know.
I don't know if I need to repeat questions or not.
I'll ask them. Keep talking.
Yeah. Can you hear Jesse? Okay, I'll repeat that question just in case. The question is, what are some good / healthy / productive ways to deal with rejection? This is a great question. We talked about rejection a bit in one of my earlier videos, which we can probably link to in the description or something. And in that one, we just talked about the fact that rejection is kind of hard, and it's worth dealing with, and it's also hard for the person rejecting to do. But we also talked about, I think it's some important ways to deal with rejection were also addressed in the meeting needs video. And in that video, I talked about the fact that sex and relationships can fulfill a lot of different needs, and there can be a lot of different reasons that we are doing it and want to do it. And so when we can't have sex, when we get rejected, or when the timing doesn't work out, there are different ways to figure out how to fulfill those different needs. When it comes to rejection in particular, some really good things to keep in mind is like emotional support, just talking to your friends. I think people do this in general pretty naturally, is just like if they get rejected, then talk to a friend and like spend some make sure that they're getting some attention and some support from somebody that loves them. Some of the things to keep in mind are, I mean, I don't know, there are, I think when it comes to figuring out how to deal with something, and in this case, rejection, the main thing is to figure out how it's affecting you. Like, pay attention to like, how am I feeling about this? Am I mostly feeling sad? Am I feeling lonely? Am I feeling angry? Am I feeling surprised or betrayed? And I think that's really the place to start to figure out how to actually deal with it, is figure out like what you're dealing with, right? So if you're primarily feeling sad, then trying to do something, then think of things that usually make you happy or make you feel better, like spending time with friends, or like comfort food, or like your favorite activity. Working out can be really good if that's something that you like to do. So that's, that's reaction to one part of the experience, if that's what you're primarily feeling. If you're feeling really angry and upset at the other person, then that's a whole nother world, right? So in that case, I would recommend something along the lines of, well, I mean, I guess it depends on why you're feeling that way. If you're feeling really angry that you got rejected, then it would be good to think about why. Why is that how you're feeling? Is it because you feel just betrayed because you thought that they would say yes and you're really surprised? I would just spend some time thinking about why you're feeling that way. And if you are feeling some negative things about the other person, then rewatch my rejection video. Keep in mind that they are another person, they have their needs, and though it's probably pretty hard at that point, try and keep in mind that them rejecting you is the nicer option of if they were feeling that they didn't want to do whatever you proposed, then it's really nice that they communicated that to you so that you know, instead of them doing something that they didn't want to, and then that could go a whole bunch of different unpleasant ways. And really, like, keep in mind that they have to take care of themselves too. They're a person and they have needs and all that as well. But yeah, I mean, that's sort of the main suggestion, is just pay attention to what it is you think you need at that time and figure out a way to fulfill it, or a way to frame it in your head that feels a bit better, or that is just cathartic. Again, working out can be great sometimes. Yeah. let's go ahead and ask another question.
Next question.
Let's see.
Everybody said they can indeed hear me, so hi.
Awesome.
Guys.
Hi. Good. So I don't have to repeat all the questions.
That's true. What's the next question? How do you recommend breaching the subject of kink to a vanilla partner?
That is a great question. In my relationships, the question tends to get breached for me just because it usually comes up when we're hanging out with our friends. Or, oh God, there was like slight story time. I was on a first date with someone and we went to one of my friend's parties. And towards the end of the party, when a bunch of people had left, we looked around and everybody was like, everybody here is kinky, except for this person that nobody knew. And so we like decided to like play like a game about that. And I was like, oh, well, this is a like rather fast introduction to a bunch of things about me. Welcome. It was mostly just really awkward because I had asked them out. And so I was like trying to make sure that they were feeling okay. Anyway, that's not answering the question. Jesse's laughing at me right now. So broaching the subject of kink to a vanilla or at least vanilla assumed partner, because if you haven't talked about it yet, then you probably don't know whether or not they are interested and other things. I don't, let's see, there are probably a couple, the internet probably has a couple of good suggestions to this, but I would just say probably start slowly. Hopefully, I would actually start by, in your relationship, talking about things that you're interested in. Like start the dialogue about just like, oh, like, you know, I prefer when you like touch me here versus touch me there, about non-kinky stuff first. So you get in the habit of talking about that, or like trying like, oh, would you mind like trying this position? I find it more comfortable sometimes. And so getting in the habit of just like presenting new ideas or just like talking about your preferences while you're still in the realm of like vanilla or normal, which honestly the definition of those is not particularly defined, but something that that feels safer to you, feels like simpler to you. And then from there you can be like, you can just sort of transition from there and just be like, hey, like I sometimes, you know, like my hair to be a bit pulled, like would you be interested in doing that? Or like, hey, is it okay if I scratch your back a little bit while we're doing that? And then so just sort of ease into it. So that could be one good way to start asking questions about. Another one is just to broach the topic in a different way. So don't, well, I mean, you could just come out and say like, hey, I'm interested in some pretty kinky stuff. Do you think we could talk about that and go from there? You can always just keep in mind that the very blunt, direct option is always an option. So if you're feeling willing to do that, then go ahead and do that. But another thing is if you could mention a book that you read recently or an event, or if there's any sort of context around you, like something going on or a conversation that somebody had, then you could like just mention, oh, you know, like you remember that 50 Shades of Grey movie that we went to the other day? It probably won't be that blatant, but yeah, I mean, like just bring up the topic in some other way, and then like talk about it and sort of like feel their reaction to the subject. And depending on if you're feeling comfortable, you could be like, hey, you know, like I've actually got some like curiosity about this. Do you have any curiosity about it? We could try it. The other thing I will say, so this was something that was pretty important to me with new partners, because I do have a bunch of interest in a bunch of kinky things, but I worried a lot about my partners feeling a lot of pressure, that if they weren't kinky enough that I wouldn't enjoy having sex with them, or that like they had to do things like or whatever. And so something that was really important to me to say pretty early off the bat was just to talk to them like after the subject came up of just like, yeah, I totally like, you know, being spanked or whatever it is. to be like, hey, by the way, for me, like this is an interest, not a need. And that might be different for you, but that was how I presented it, as just like, this is something I'm interested in, but I still also really enjoy vanilla sex, and you don't have to be interested in this stuff for us to have a very good time. And so that was a very important message for me to get across to partners, especially since a lot of my partners were new to the topic when I started seeing them. And again, like your situation might be a bit different. It might be a much bigger part of your life than it is for me. So you might have to phrase it differently from that. But that is, I think, getting that message across of just like, hey, really, you don't have to be interested in this, or like at least being clear about what is important to you that they do be interested in or do try. I think that is a very helpful and important thing to cover pretty early on. So,
cool.
Yeah.
All right. Here's a very different question.
Okay.
From Jordan. What is the etymology of the word consent?
So he told me this question before, and I actually did not know the answer where the word came from, but we looked it up, and it is based in Latin. And apparently it's the con and sent. The con is from com, which I think might be from cum. I took a bit of Latin in high school, but I don't remember everything. So like the first part means with, and then sent comes from sensire, which means like to feel. And so at least
that was the whole answer to that question.
Yeah, it means to feel together.
All right, we have a question from Julia, which I think might be a joke, but I'm not sure, which is, why are you such a private person?
So that's a bit of a joke between us, because one time we were hanging out and my parents were visiting, and we were all trying to figure out the layout of my new apartment. And my mom kept saying, well, Sarah's a really private person. So Sarah's a really private person. So I want to make sure that, her bedroom is all sanctioned off like this. And it was just really funny because every time she kept repeating this throughout the day. And Julie and I would just turn to each other and just be like, yep, I'm just a really private person. I definitely don't share any details about my life or my sex life on the internet for everyone to see. But yeah, so I don't know why. I don't know why I'm such a private person. It's just a part of who I am.
All right, cool. Let's see. What is your origin story? What's your superhero origin story?
Oh.
Why did you get interested in consent and sex-related stuff?
So there's sort of like two answers to that, because sex-related stuff and consent-related stuff. So I've always been pretty interested in sex, as a person wanting to engage in it, but also just as a general topic. I've always eaten up information about it. I did not really get much in the way of education about it. My parents never gave me the sex talk, none of that. And so any information I could find, I would just gobble up. And so it's just like a very interesting topic to me. I was never like diagnosed this way or anything, but I definitely identified as being on the hypersexual end of things. So like it was a pretty constant thing in my mind. So I've always been pretty interested in sex. I've always been really interested in just like talking about it and learning about it. That's just been a part of who I am for a while. And it took until a year or two ago, about 2 years ago, to really realize how much I cared about sex education in general, not just like in my own life, but just like it being a part of society and like contributing to conversation about it, teaching it to other people. I enjoyed presenting myself as someone who people could ask questions of. So in college, I was involved with the freshman orientation a bunch, and so I always enjoyed, the sex talks that we would give, and would chime in a lot with that. And anyway, so that's just long been an interest of mine, and it's just one that I became more like formally aware of, like consciously aware of as being a strong interest of mine in the past year or two. So my interest in consent is interesting because I didn't consciously realize that I was interested in consent until after a long time of thinking about it. I realized that a bunch of the different topics I'd been mulling over in my brain happened to be related to consent. And then I realized that there was a theme there. That happened because, I mean, the long answer to this is that in a few years ago, there were some things going on in my life that led to a very long, like many months period of time where I had a much lower libido than I had had before. And it was just a very surprising thing to me. And so I had a bunch of weird, I basically had an identity crisis because of it. And that came back, and there have been more fluctuations since then. That's a whole nother story, but sort of that kicked off for me a lot of thinking about, what role does sex play in my life, and who am I if I'm not always horny. But what it led to was there were a couple of instances. One in particular, I remember, I actually think I've mentioned this in a video, where I was spending time with a on and off again partner, and pretty much every time that we saw each other, we would have sex because that's just the relationship that we had. We were friends, and we just had sex when that was a possibility. And there was just this one night where I completely didn't want to, and it just baffled me. And I definitely talked about this in one of the videos, but basically I was laying in bed with this person, and he was touching me and trying to get things started, and I just completely froze and freaked out a little bit. And finally he was really kind and noticed that I was upset, and I eventually was able to say I don't think I want to do this.
The stress and stillness video.
Yeah, the stress and stillness video. This is where I mentioned this story, and it was really interesting. And thankfully, that situation turned out fine. He was like, "That's totally fine," and then we just sort of modified our relationship from there. But that's really started the ball rolling in my head of realizing how difficult it was to tell him that, and that the main reason that I was even able to was because I trusted him so much. And that was just kind of, am I allowed to curse? Because that was just kind of a mind fuck. That I literally was only able to tell him no because I trusted him so deeply. And that the implication there was that somebody that I didn't trust so much, I wouldn't have been able to tell no. And so that was definitely one of the first things that made me start thinking about just whoa, what is, how am I capable of saying no? And basically it made me aware of the fact that I had some trouble communicating when I wasn't on board with everything. And that was a very scary thing to me. And I just spent a lot of time thinking about it and talking to friends about it. And in addition, there had definitely been a couple of events, a couple of times in my life where I was with partners and I wanted to have sex more than they did. And it just was very confusing to me. And I definitely, anyway. And so basically the other side of it, of just my feelings of this other person doesn't want to have sex right now, even though I expect them to, and I feel really weird and conflicted about that. And so basically both ends of it, I started realizing that Jesse is telling me to wrap up this question, but basically I started realizing that I had a bunch of thoughts about this on both sides. And when I was thinking about starting a YouTube channel about sex, I thought about all the conversations that I've been having with friends about sex recently, and realized that there was this theme of consent, and that it was really interesting to me because I'm constantly curious about it. So That's the very long answer to that question.
We got our first live question.
We got our first live question. Okay, cool.
From Ashley.
Okay.
Do you have any plans, all things consent related, past the YouTube channel?
That is a great question. Nothing formal yet, but I have big dreams of things all consent related past the YouTube channel. I am hoping to eventually put together some talks. I would love to speak at schools eventually. I don't have anything formally in the works at the moment, but I'm planning to put something together there and go from there. I would love, so yeah, like, so a dream of mine is I would really love to give consent speeches at colleges in particular, but none of that is formal yet. But let me know if that sounds cool to you. Yeah, that's my answer. Thanks, Ashley.
All right, we probably have time for one or two more questions.
Mhm.
So if anyone has a question, leave it in the comments.
Yeah, leave questions in the comments.
Let's see. Consent. Okay, here's a question that I don't really understand how to say that yet. Hang on. Consent on the fly.
Okay.
Is like the topic. After you establish rules beforehand, do you have advice for checking in when someone appears to change their mind or redraw boundaries in the middle of sex or a scene?
Awesome. Yeah, so we totally did an episode with a bunch of different options for checking in methods. And you can utilize any of those. So there's like the two squeezes and asking things. I think that question was in particular in the context of BDSM scenes where it might not be very clear to, if you're just asking, are you okay? It might not be very clear that you're asking, is this okay? Because there's the context of the scene. But I mean, in general, if that's not the context, then you can always just ask, how is this going? Do you like this? Is this feeling good? Do you want to change positions? Would you like something different? Just ask questions, keep checking in. I mean, the honest answer to how do you check in is to check in. But some other ways to do that, if just asking a question isn't really an option, is you can always, if you did establish something like a safe word, then you have the option of using the safe word. For this, if it is a situation where you're establishing a safe word or some sort of consent boundaries before you start, then this might be a really good thing to keep in mind of something that you want to establish beforehand, of a way to check in. So in the check-in methods video, one thing that we suggested was combining a couple methods so that at any point you could just like squeeze your partner's arm to like see if they're feeling okay, and then they have to respond with color if that's the method that you use. So like red for no, this isn't good, or green for yeah, keep going, I'm fine, or yellow for I'm not sure. So I think that's a really good idea to think about beforehand of how am I going to communicate that I'm checking in to make sure that everything's okay. So, and you could even have like, you could even have like a safe phrase or a check-in phrase that you've agreed on. So different from a safe word, and that like its meaning is everything okay? Here's your chance to say the safe word if you haven't thought of it but wanted to. And I don't know if a good example of that, but like, how is the weather today? I don't know, something like that. Come up with your own. Put some suggestions in the comments. But yeah, but in general, like if you're worried, then so a good rule as when it comes to scenes is that if you're honestly like stay on the safe side. Like the reason that the BDSM community has come up with a lot of really good consent related things is that it is dangerous. There are a lot of things that could go wrong. So err on the side of safety. If you're not sure that the other person is okay, then it's okay to sacrifice the scene. And in the same way, in any sort of sexual situation, it is better to kind of ruin the mood if in the worst case, like if like there's not some easy, simple way to ask or communicate, then err on the side of ruining the mood rather than doing something that somebody's just really not okay with but not able to communicate to you. I don't know.
All right, cool. You answered that one pretty quickly, so maybe we could even do 2 more.
Ooh, we could do a couple more.
All right. So I have this friend who is interested in exploring threesomes.
Okay.
A question from Anonymous.
Mm-hmm. Anonymous.
There is a specific mindset that one needs to be in order to be in the mood for a threesome. Presumably, each person must be in that mindset. How do you think consent should be addressed in that situation?
That is a great question, and one I've thought about a lot recently, actually. So you may or may not agree that that you need to be in a particular mindset when you're in a threesome. I think basically what that means is just like you have to want to and have to be in the mood, I guess. And this kind of applies outside of threesomes as well. There's this idea of like being in the mood or really wanting to at that moment. I think the reason that it's more of a conscious thing in threesomes is because it's a less like normal activity, and so you might need a bit more drive to get over the like.
Also just more people that need to be in the mood.
Yes. So that's the other thing. So like there are now 3 people. So 2 people can be complicated. Hell, 1 person is complicated. Okay. 2 people, more complicated. And that's why consent is a topic that's worth talking about and trying to figure out. 3 people, oh my goodness. So the question is, how do you deal with trying to coordinate everybody being in the mood, but also making sure that it's consensual, and you talked about things beforehand. And that's a great question, and something I've been thinking about a lot recently. I think the best conclusion I've come to so far is that it's a great idea to have the conversation about whether you're okay with this while you're not in the mood, or at least like at a different time than you're going to jump in. It doesn't have to be, but just know that you don't have to be wanting to do it right then to have a conversation about it. I think that's the sort of the important part about it, is that you can have an honest conversation about just like, well, I think I'm okay with this idea. Like, here's kind of what's important to me and what I'm a little bit worried about. And you don't have to have the pressure of, just because I'm talking about doing this right now, I want to do it right now. And then you can move on from there of just like, once you've talked about like, oh, well, we think that we're all on board with this. And you can go ahead and schedule a time if that's what works for you. But something that I've been thinking about is just, it's also okay to just say like, I'm totally on board with this. I don't really feel like it right now. But when basically just establish that you're going to talk to each other when one or more people is in the mood, and see if everybody's on the same page at that point and go from there. So again, that's not like a perfect answer, because that makes it hard to schedule, because you can't just depend on everybody wanting to at the same time. But at the very least, like, you can acknowledge that it's difficult to schedule. You can acknowledge that that's an important thing to you, and you can know, but you'll already have the knowledge beforehand that you talked about it, and that everybody is like at least okay with it in concept, if not feeling like it right now. Yeah, so this is an idea that I'm still exploring and still trying to find out more information about, but that's my conception of it at the moment.
Cool. Okay. One last question.
Unless we get a live question.
I'll probably just put it in.
Then we'll just put it.
Okay. I'm having some trouble articulating what I want in a relationship. Do you have any advice of some helpful language to use? Or resources to find language, I guess.
Okay. Yeah. So unfortunately, the how I want to respond is to ask this person more questions, because I don't know what you mean by what you want in a relationship. Because do you mean you are having trouble articulating what you want during sex, or what you want in general from a romantic relationship, from a sexual relationship? Yeah. So there are a lot of questions to ask from there. So maybe that's the first answer, is to ask yourself a lot of questions. We can go ahead and we can probably find some resources and put them in the description. Because the other thing is, I don't know what in particular you're having trouble with as far as articulating, like just using language about your body, using language about relationships. Like, maybe this is a question about whether polyamory or monogamy, or just wanting to be exclusive with someone, or how you want your romantic relationship to look like. That's a hard question because I don't know the specific question. Yeah, so I guess the first thing that I would say is ask yourself all those questions. We did have a couple episodes, Use Your Words Part 1 and 2, where we gave a couple of resources about basically the idea there was like if you're having trouble coming up with words, coming up with something to say in the moment, those episodes are addressing that and give a couple of resources as far as just like sexual language. And so I would start there. I would also, any friends that you're able to talk to, ask them. If it is more a question of not knowing words or terminology for your body or just sex-related things, then there are a lot of resources online, and also there are a lot of great books that are just like books about sex, and you could start from there. One of my favorites is The Guide to Getting It On, which we can put in the description. There's also the Good Vibrations Guide to Sex. I think that's the name of it. There's the Nina Hartley's Guide to Total Sex. There are lots of books that are just books about sex and books about how to do it and how to talk about it. Girl Sex 101 is a book that I just started that is really good and has a lot of that. But yeah, I guess it really depends on the specifics of what you're looking for, but those are some good places to start. You can also just, I've always found that when I'm trying to put something into words, then soundboarding off of a friend is really helpful. That's part of the process of when I'm writing scripts is I talk to Jessie or another friend. So just talking to a friend and just being like, oh, I don't know what I want, and have them ask questions and go back and forth. That can be really helpful. Or if you have therapists, like you can ask them questions about that. They probably have some really great, they might have some really good resources. But you wanted to, you can go ahead and leave them in the comments, and we can do another Q&A later on, or I might just try and answer them in the comments. But thank you so much for everybody who sent in questions. It was really helpful. Thank you so much for watching. You guys are amazing. And do you have anything to say, Jessie? No? All right. Happy consenting. I'll see you next week.